What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, you're being watched by the most relentless observer you'll ever meet? And that observer is you? Not your eyes, not your conscious mind, but something deeper, something that never sleeps. For INFJs, this isn't metaphor or paranoia. It's the architecture of their consciousness itself. They wake up in the morning already being scrutinized by a presence they can feel but can't quite see. It's happening in their shower, at their office desk, even in moments of what should be pure peace. And the strangest part? This feeling of being constantly observed doesn't necessarily require another person in the room. Sometimes the watcher and the watched are exactly the same person, split into infinite mirrors reflecting each other endlessly. If you've ever felt this, if you've ever sat alone and sensed eyes on you that didn't exist, then you're about to discover why your brain is actually working exactly how it's supposed to work, and why the most advanced minds in the world experience something most people never will. The architecture of INFJ consciousness, a 24/7 internal documentary. INFJs don't just think. Their consciousness operates on entirely different infrastructure. Imagine your mind as a film production that never stops rolling. While most people have one camera recording their life, INFJs have multiple overlapping angles, a director, editors, sound engineers, all working simultaneously inside their own head. Here's what's wild. An INFJ could be having a conversation with you while simultaneously watching themselves have it. They're noticing your face while critiquing their own response. They're in the moment and observing it, the actor and the audience at the same time. This multi-layered awareness is why friends think INFJs have psychic powers. They're not reading minds. They're picking up on micro-expressions, tone shifts, and energy changes nobody else notices. Their brain transcribes reality at much higher resolution than standard definition. But that documentary crew never stops filming. Even alone, in silence, that internal director is still analyzing. That editor is still cutting. That critic is still evaluating, which is exactly why an INFJ feels watched even when nobody's there. They're watching themselves, always watching themselves. The collective unconscious connection, your mind transcending personal boundaries. For INFJs, intuition isn't a vague gut feeling. It's a direct pipeline to something deeper, what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious. Their minds can tap into patterns from the past, present, and future simultaneously. It feels less like thinking and more like receiving. A complete idea arrives whole, packaged with certainty. A solution appears without steps. Insights download directly into their awareness as if someone uploaded them. This connection to something beyond the individual mind makes INFJs feel different, almost alien. While everyone else works from personal experience and logic, the INFJ is channeling something transpersonal, archetypal, ancient. This is why they feel watched by forces larger than themselves. When you're receiving information from the collective unconscious, when you're channeling patterns that feel beyond you, you sense being part of something bigger, something watching through you, observing reality through your consciousness. The boundary between observer and observed blurs. You're not just seeing the world is seeing through you. And that creates a peculiar exposure. The dual observer. How your brain creates the illusion of external surveillance. INFJs have what researchers call self-overhearing consciousness, a second self that watches the primary self and evaluates it. This isn't literary theory for them. It's lived reality. An INFJ at a party is simultaneously in the conversation and standing outside observing it. They're watching themselves speak, worrying if words are right, noticing body language, evaluating how they land. All of this happens in parallel with the actual conversation. Not after, but simultaneously. This creates a psychological split. Part of them participates in reality. Part stands back and watches. And when you watch yourself that intensely, it feels like someone is watching you. Your mind creates a mirror. If I'm observing myself this closely, doesn't it feel like someone else is observing me too? That confusion, that beautiful, terrible confusion, generates a persistent sensation of being under observation even when absolutely nobody else is present. Advanced pattern recognition, your brain's permanent alert system. The human brain evolved to survive. INFJ's threat detection system runs at sensitivity levels most people never experience. Their introverted intuition is like advanced pattern recognition software, constantly collecting invisible data, body language, tone shifts, microexpressions, energy, hesitations, what's not being said. Without conscious effort, the brain suddenly connects dots and delivers insight. The INFJ doesn't know how they know. They just know. That knowing feels so certain, so complete, that when it reaches consciousness, it feels like absolute truth. But here's the problem. This same system that helps them understand people also makes them hypervigilant. Their nervous system is calibrated to pick up threats and inconsistencies. Neutral input becomes suspicious when your brain is running constant security scans. So when an INFJ is alone, their threat detection doesn't shut down, it amplifies. A sound becomes suspicious. A thought becomes concerning. And the feeling of being watched intensifies because their brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do: perceive threats and sense what's coming next. The empathy trap, when absorbing others, creates invisible exposure. Many INFJs are genuine empaths. This isn't feeling sorry for people. It's absorbing their emotional state into your own body. If you're sad, the INFJ nearby might start crying without fully understanding why. Their emotional boundaries are permeable, less like a wall, more like a veil that emotions flow across constantly. This creates a psychological phenomenon. The INFJ feels so linked to people around them that they unconsciously assume those people are equally linked to them. If I can feel your emotional state so clearly, surely you can sense mine too? If I'm reading you carefully, you must be reading me with the same intensity? This creates double vision where INFJs feel watched by the very people they're watching. They reach out emotionally with all their sensitivity, and that reaching out makes them feel vulnerable. Vulnerability plus emotional sensitivity equals feeling exposed. Feeling exposed equals feeling watched. It's like they've revealed too much, made themselves too transparent, and now they're paying the price by feeling perpetually observed. The mirror neuron cascade, when your self-perception becomes feeling observed. Mirror neurons fire both when you perform an action and when you watch someone else perform it. For most people, this runs quietly in background. For INFJs with deep sensitivity, these neurons might work over time. An INFJ reading alone becomes absorbed. Then their brain does something strange. Because mirror neurons are firing, because their mind synchronizes with others so naturally, they momentarily perceive themselves being read, perceive themselves as an observer might perceive them. Self-observation and other observation collapse into each other. The distinction blurs. For a split second, or sometimes longer, the INFJ's brain can't tell if they're watching themselves or being watched. This isn't imagination or mental illness. This is neurology. This is what happens when a brain is wired for deep empathy and pattern recognition. The signals cross, and the INFJ is left with a visceral sense of presence, of being observed, of being seen, even though they're absolutely alone. The stress spiral. When everything intensifies, INFJs operate with baseline anxiety most personality types don't experience. It's background radiation, constant low-level alertness that's almost always present, even when everything is objectively fine. This exists because their introverted intuition is always anticipating, always looking at what might happen next, always preparing for potential problems. They see 10 moves ahead while everyone figures out the current position. Useful for prediction, but absolutely exhausting for the nervous system. Add actual stress, a lost job, relationship problems, failure, and this baseline anxiety doesn't just increase. It cascades. It spirals. The threat detection system goes into full-blown threat mode. The feeling of being watched intensifies. It becomes harder to dismiss as anxiety. It feels real, justified, inevitable. Some stressed INFJs can barely be in rooms with people because they feel so intensely observed, scrutinized, judged. They withdraw, trying to make themselves smaller so fewer eyes will notice them, even though those eyes don't exist. The dream-reality border, when inner feels more real than outer. Here's something strange INFJs experience but rarely discuss. The line between dreaming and waking is thinner for them. This isn't metaphorical. Researchers studying INFJ brain patterns note that INFJs operate with dreamlike quality to ordinary existence. Because NI connects to the unconscious mind, because it channels information from the collective unconscious, there's less barrier between conscious and unconscious. An INFJ might dream vividly, wake up, and the dream feels more real than it should. Emotions linger. Images persist. Being in that dream world stays with them. Sometimes the opposite happens. They're awake, going about their day, and it feels dreamlike, unreal, like observing from behind glass, like watching a movie of their life rather than living it. This dissociation intensifies the feeling of being watched. If your waking life feels dreamlike, unreal, then it makes sense you'd feel observed, because in dreams, you're always observed by invisible consciousness. And when your waking life has dreamlike qualities, that invisible consciousness still watches. The relentless meta-awareness. Thinking about thinking. One defining feature of INFJ consciousness is metacognition, thinking about thinking. But for INFJs, it's even more complex, thinking about thinking. Recursive loops of self-awareness that go surprisingly deep. An INFJ notices they're anxious, then notices they're noticing anxiety, then notices they're noticing that they're noticing. This recursive loop intensifies what they're observing. The more you watch something, the bigger it gets. The more you're aware of your own self-consciousness, the more self-conscious you become. This is why social situations exhaust many INFJs, even pleasant ones. They're not just participating, they're critiquing their participation. Not just experiencing emotion, analyzing it. Not just speaking, evaluating whether it landed correctly and planning corrections. This constant meta-awareness splits consciousness. Part of them is here, present now. Part floats above the scene, documenting it, critiquing it, analyzing it. And that floating observer, that's what creates the sensation of being watched, judged, evaluated. The exhausting part? That observer never takes a break. The Misattribution Problem, when inner observation feels like external exposure. Here's a cognitive quirk rarely discussed: misattribution. Your brain attributes a feeling to the wrong source. INFJs often misattribute internal observation to external observation. An INFJ might be intensely aware of their own internal state, aware of anxiety, thoughts, insecurities, vulnerabilities. All that self-awareness creates a feeling of being exposed. They feel so conscious of their inner world that it seems visible to everyone, like their thoughts are written on their forehead. This is the misattribution. The INFJ is aware of their own inner world, the actual source. But their brain misattributes that awareness to the belief that others are also aware, that others can see what they see about themselves, that they're transparent. If you're transparent, obviously you're being watched. Obviously people are reading your mind, observing vulnerabilities, judging insecurities. This creates surveillance sensation even when nobody is paying attention. Reality. Most people are too caught in their own world to read the INFJ with the same intensity the INFJ reads themselves. But the INFJ's brain, at high sensitivity, perceives their own self-awareness as external awareness. The sanctuary imperative, why solitude isn't optional. Understanding what's happening in the INFJ mind explains why they're so protective of alone time. It's not just introversion or needing to recharge. It's survival. When an INFJ is alone in a safe environment, quiet, calm, threat-free, that's when the internal documentary crew can finally rest. The observer stops observing. Recursive meta-awareness loops still. The INFJ can exist without constantly watching themselves exist. This is non-negotiable. Without regular protected solitude, INFJ mental state deteriorates rapidly. Feeling watched intensifies. Anxiety escalates. Exposure becomes unbearable. This is why many INFJs structure entire lives around protecting alone time. They avoid events, decline opportunities, seem antisocial. But really, they're fighting to maintain psychological balance. The world misunderstands this, sees it as selfish or depression. It's actually the opposite. It's the INFJ's way of staying sane, managing incredible consciousness complexity, giving that relentless internal observer a chance to rest. The spiritual interpretation, neurology, or something deeper. Here's something interesting. Sometimes the feeling of being watched isn't entirely psychological. Sometimes it's spiritual. Throughout history and across cultures, a watcher or observer has spiritual significance. In meditation traditions, enlightenment is becoming aware of awareness itself, recognizing the consciousness that observes your consciousness. In some frameworks, this is God watching, the universe watching, or a higher self watching. For INFJs already connected to something beyond individual consciousness through NI, this spiritual interpretation feels very real. They might feel watched by their higher self, by the universe, by something transpersonal and vast. Once they reframe it spiritually instead of as anxiety or neurology, the entire experience transforms. Instead of feeling exposed and vulnerable, the INFJ might feel supported, guided, witnessed positively. The feeling of being watched becomes not burden, but reassurance. You're not alone. The universe is watching. Something cares about what you do, how you grow, who you become. Integration, from burden to superpower. You're an INFJ. You feel watched alone. There's a relentless internal observer documenting every move, analyzing every word, critiquing every action. What do? First, this isn't a flaw. It's not something to fix. It's how your particular mind is wired. The world needs people perceiving at this sensitivity level. The world needs the INFJ's gifts. Second, meet your internal observer with compassion, not criticism. That voice constantly analyzing, it's protecting you, understanding you, helping you grow. Say thank you sometimes. Third, create boundaries between observation and action. Just because you're observing yourself closely doesn't mean everyone else is. Just because you notice your flaws doesn't mean others notice them. Correct the misattribution. Fourth, channel your observation gift outward. INFJs who direct observational abilities toward art, writing, counseling, teaching, activism. These INFJs live aligned with their nature. They're creating something meaningful with that documentary crew in their mind. Fifth, protect your sanctuary. Guard solitude like the precious thing it is. You need it. You deserve it. Your mind needs it. Sixth, find other INFJs. Knowing you're not alone feeling watched. Knowing other people's brains work this way. That's profoundly validating. Conclusion, the watcher and watch becoming one. The feeling of being watched alone is one of the strangest things an INFJ navigates. It's rooted in neurology, in consciousness structure, in how NI connects them to something beyond individual mind, in sensitivity, empathy, relentless self-awareness. It's not paranoia. It's not mental illness. It's the natural consequence of being wired, as INFJs are wired. But here's the beautiful part. Once an INFJ accepts this, once they stop fighting and start working with it, everything shifts. That relentless internal observer isn't an enemy. It's a collaborator. It's the part that sees deeply, understands vastly, perceives what others miss. The INFJ isn't broken feeling watched. They're experiencing something most humans never get to: direct access to their own mind's workings, connection to something vast and transpersonal, ability to perceive reality at much higher resolution. Is it exhausting sometimes? Yes. Overwhelming sometimes? Completely. But extraordinary? Undeniably. So next time you feel that sensation, that presence, That sense of being observed completely alone, recognize it, not as threat, but as your superpower activating. The watcher and the watched finally becoming one.